I was able to produce 300 masterpieces over the course of 5 years because of this one simple yet endlessly abundant compositional device that literally any musician can use, whether you know theory, whether you're a beginner, whether you're advanced. This is something that applies to everyone who creates music. But before we get into that, let me give you a tiny taste of some of the tracks I produced using this one simple method. The method that I use to compose all of those tracks is called Rhythmic Frameworks. Now, Rhythmic Frameworks are the thing that allow me to sit down at my digital audio workstation and literally just crank out masterpiece after masterpiece without ever hitting a single creative block. So using these frameworks, I can instantly establish a structure that will carry me through an entire composition, beginning, middle to end. Now, if you've been watching my channel for a while, you already know about some of these rhythmic frameworks. You know about Meshuggah framework, you know about special accent T-high, you know about 332 framework. But in this particular video, I'm going to share a rhythmic framework that I have never publicly disclosed. And it's the framework that allowed me to write riffs like this. And like this. And like this. You know I never got fast. Now, before I reveal every aspect of the framework I used on those 3 tracks, I will remind you that all of the frameworks discussed on this YouTube channel were things that I found by studying the music that I loved. So these were all observed in the wild. I found the Meshuggah framework only after transcribing 50 or more Meshuggah riffs, right? And then I compounded that knowledge by transcribing another 50 or so Meshuggah riffs, and then another 100 Tool riffs, and then also some Alan Holdsworth, some Steve Grover, some Chris Potter for good measure. And what I learned from all that study is the simple idea that parameters are your best friend. See, parameters prevent you from getting lost in the infinite potential of music. And I know that's a major problem for composers, right? Because I'm a teacher, I teach composition. A lot of my students come to me with this problem of, I'm getting lost in the sauce, right? I'm getting lost in infinite space. I'm not seeing where I can begin and end phrases. I'm not seeing how I can stir the pot without losing track of the phrase. And the solution is literally just understanding how to implement parameters in your music. So if I want to be a masterful composer composing pieces that I'm genuinely proud of, I need to not only leverage the power of parameters, I need to also understand the very nature of parameters and how the musicians that I admire are using parameters in their compositions. Now, the nature of these parameters is simply summed up as rhythmic frameworks. These parameters are rhythmic parameters, right? And there's a certain mentality to using these rhythmic parameters. And you understand that when you actually go and study music and you see how they're used. Good news for you is I already did that work, right? Spent years studying, transcribing, reverse engineering songs that I loved. And I came out with these specific rhythmic frameworks, which were the things I used to compose 300 or more tunes over the past 5 years. So the bottom line is, rhythm dictates everything. Rhythm is the most important parameter. It's the fundamental parameter. See, we need to establish rhythmic anchor points, right, that are never changing. And once we do that, harmony and melody are inevitably revealed. Now, later in this video, you're going to see exactly how harmony and melody connects to these rhythmic parameters. But all you need to understand now is that we establish rhythm first, and rhythm reveals everything else we need in the music. Melody, harmony, even lyrics to an extent are dictated by rhythm. And with that in mind, I'm going to reveal the rhythmic framework that's the subject of this video. It's called rhythmic stealing. So rhythmic stealing is when you steal a rhythm from a song that already exists. Once you've stolen that rhythm, you remove all the harmonic components, right? You remove melody, harmony, all the notes, anything that isn't rhythm, remove it. Next, you write a new riff and ultimately a new composition that is specifically based on that rhythm that you stole. Now, to see exactly how this works, I'm going to share a full lesson from the Systems for Creation archive where I create a new riff based on the rhythm that I stole from the song Tempest by Tool. It's specifically that rhythm that's 4/4 plus 13/8, that 21/8 rhythm. I'm going to use Tool's organization of 21/8 as a fundamental non-variable component in order to create a new riff entirely and ultimately a new song. There's so many underlying mentalities that you have to consider when you're doing this. And this lesson that I'm about to share with you completely unpacks each level that you need to consider when working with this particular rhythmic framework, the rhythmic stealing rhythmic framework. So get comfortable, be prepared to take notes, because this lesson is going to make you think about rhythm in a way that you have never imagined it previously. And ultimately, it's going to trigger an avalanche of creative enlightenment. Without further ado, enjoy this raw, unedited lesson from the Systems for Creation archive where we discuss rhythmic stealing.
On a side note, that's what I've been looking for is like, I think you use the words like anchor points, like something or some kind of like limit on it, because when you try to build these odd, or at least when I try to build these odd rhythm patterns, like if you don't start with an anchor point, like I'm just floating in space.
Exactly.
And it gets messy sometimes, you know?
Yep. 100%. I get that, because there's that idea of, free-formed form, like free-form composition, where you can just have riff after riff after riff. I think that's like a dream theater approach or something like that. Plenty of bands do this and get away with it. I would even argue Tool does it and gets away with it somehow. But I think if anyone who's getting away with it is they're still finding a symmetry. And so it's just like, what level is the symmetry? So if you zoom in, right, you're going to see a lot of asymmetry in some kind of Tool thing. You'll see what I mean by that. But if you zoom out, it becomes symmetrical because it's like asymmetry together equaling a symmetry. And so I think that's the best way to think. So it's like, think about the biggest phrase you can, but then within that phrase, start thinking about how you can stir the pot there, where you're building up some tension, but you know where that tension is going to end. I think that's the answer to kind of not getting floating in space. So there's like exercises we can do, exercises that become songs. You know what I mean? Like it's an exercise, but I am always thinking of like, yeah, I'm going to produce this into an actual song, but I'm still thinking of like, okay, I'm going to give myself this parameter and I'm going to commit to that, and therefore it becomes an exercise. And then there are like sub parameters, and we'll talk about that. So let's share that. Okay, so this one, it's the same idea. So we just went through this idea of like, just showed you the example of literally taking Vicarious and then making a new song out of it, right? So this is going to be the same logic with Tempest from the newest Tool album. Man, so many people, you might have missed this entire thing because that album is weird and it's taken me a long time to get into it. But the more I listen to it, I hear like these just like, oh my God. So let's check it out. So this is just the actual riff. So I'm playing the actual parts that I recreated. So it's literally like Adam Jones, Justin Chancellor, Robot, Danny Carey, and Maynard, right? Like I'm just being honest to them. But what you'll notice is, and you know this probably about my writing style, is like, I'm not trying to make the drum sound anything like Danny Carey. I'm actually more embracing like a synthetic drum texture. I like that. And I use beat machines to reinforce that. That's just something I do. But what happens is, if this tune, and this is the very beginning of something that I'm going to be unpacking for a few weeks here, This tune very well could end up becoming a gas station tune where we bring this whole thing to life. So I don't rule that out either. I'm just producing it to the fullest extent so that it's clear. So when the band comes to play it, they have clearly defined parts. They can do whatever they want with those parts, but at least I give them the absolute official, here's the official part with the official rhythms. You can extrapolate. I trust you. So that's a cool thing with a live band, but nowhere near there. Just thinking about, okay, these basic parts, and let's just listen to what that is.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yeah.
Sorry, apologize.
No.
I'm just curious as to your approach. When you do this, are you going as far as like tempo, BPM? Are you going somewhere in that ballpark, or do you experiment? You're like, hey, I'm going to take this rhythm slower, or a little bit of both.
Absolutely, have experimented many times. So I'll start at the original tempo. So this is at the original tempo of the song, and many times, especially doing this with Meshuggah. So I've done this thing with Meshuggah. Like, I know I just said part of it is that I'm doing this with Tool because they're using odd meters, but I've done the exact same framework with Meshuggah where it is 4/4, and then I'm using their exact beat cycle framework and just do the same thing. I've noticed in that situation, I've slowed down a lot of those, and it's like, oh my God, it's so hard. It's so hard.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Like, you could change the BPM and get some like bananas crap, you know? Like,
think about how many layers deep you're on this, right? Imagine somebody figures out what you're doing. They lose their mind, right? It's like, you know, I mean, I don't even know if that's theoretically possible, but if you consider the fact that like this rhythm, there's precedent for it, you're just taking advantage of that like resonant precedent, you know? And it's like that has, whether somebody consciously connects it or not, that has insane weight. It has crazy gravity. And like another dimension of this, definitely worth considering for you, is using the same melodies and harmonies or rhythms that you've used in other songs or in other albums, bringing them back and re-aspecting those at a different tempo or in a different key or a different combo where like the first version is like you have the bass riff and the melody, and then you bring it back where it's like the bass riff is the melody and the melody is the bass riff at a different tempo. Scary stuff like that. I've done that a lot with GSM because you're leveraging the precedent, and that is powerful. So you have the precedent of your own music. You have the precedent of your own riffs, you know? So that's all deep and woven in this whole framework aspect that I want to show you. So first things first is, I do the original parts and I get them exactly correct in terms of like rhythm and parts, and you hear that. So you hear it's the classic Tool thing, but just like synthetic. And what's different is I've got organ instead of guitar. Organ just sounds way better than fake guitar. But obviously I'm going to record it with real guitar and do a thing there. Okay, but here's where it gets interesting. Okay, let's break down like the fundamentals. Like, what are the fundamentals? So if we listen to the Adam Jones part, that's not the fundamentals. I'll just put it that way. So this is not the fundamentals. It's like a complement to it though. It's like it's got like pieces of it, but where it all is in the bass. That's where it really is. So let's just that's the whole thing. And look at this. This repeats the whole time. So this is where we figure it out. This is where the things emerge. We have a grouping of 3, a grouping of 3, and a grouping of 2. That's a 3-3-2. There's layers here. So we've talked about the idea that rhythm breaks down in the smallest components of 3s and 2s. Okay, so most rhythmic music is in some way juggling up 3s and 2s and mixing and matching combos of 3s and 2s and sequencing 3s and 2s. That is exactly what Tool is doing right here in the most classic sense. So they're starting with a 3-3-2, which is almost ironic because that's their most used rhythm that they ever use in history. They use this rhythm all the time. So this rhythm is like a 4-4. Like, think about this. It's just think about, like, this is one beat, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's a 4-4 rhythm. So the first little chunk of that, it's like, oh, they're referencing 4-4. But then what they're doing here is, look at this. It's a 3-3-3. So one additional 3 and a 2-2. And so one additional 3 and one additional 2. So it's like they're related somehow. Like it's just a development of the small idea. But this is the whole phrase. Right here is the whole phrase. That's the thing that repeats right there. That's the whole phrase. So you can think about, I can think about it like this. I think about like 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, and that's like the first phrase. And then over here, I'm just thinking, I mean, obviously I'm thinking about like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then 7, because it's a 3 and a 4, or 2 2s. So I'm just getting down these fundamental components. I'm thinking, okay, so once again, exiting the idea of 7s and 13s and bolt, I'm just thinking of, okay, I've got a 3-3-2, a 3-3-3, 2-2. Okay, cool. I can work with that. That now fits into my 4-4 logic. All I have to do now is just abide by that. And how do I do that? So here's this process. So what I'll do is I'll make the drum part to specifically complement that. I mean, and then this is where it blows up. I just take that drum part. That's my anchor. I just use that rhythm as an anchor. Now I can rearrange that 6 ways from Sunday when I feel like it, after I do something, after I write a melody to this. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to write a riff according to this and just respecting those components. But also the drums just support. That's it. So I hear a bunch of things now in a different way. Like, this is now giving me a lot of material to work with, but I'm still gonna, so here's where the danger is. Okay, this is the guiding principle, is that where you'll get lost in this practice is if you don't follow the fundamental rhythms, right? So it's tempting to be like, oh, well, the drums have the rhythm, so I don't need to worry about it. Nope, because you already know this anyway, that the drums and the bass are basically doing the same thing most of the time, right? Maybe there's some friction, some of this, but not a lot of it. And if there is some of that, it's like a compositional thing where it's like you're supporting it somehow. You have to be supportive of that decision if you do that. But I'm keeping it basic. Like, I'm not trying to be complicated. I'm just trying to think about, let me hear this again. So I hear this as like 1, 2, 3, 4. Just a 4-4. I hear that as a 1, 2, 3, 4. And then I hear this from this to the end as a 6 plus a 7. So that sounds, in my mind, that sounds like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. Sorry. Sounds like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. There's something emerging here. So it's like, let me mark it, right? Because maybe for you, and like as the listener, maybe it's not 100% clear yet. That would make sense because I've been listening to this, right? It's in my subconscious. So this is philosophy of composition. What I need to do for you right now is make you hear that unequivocal rhythm. So I have to now build the riff according to this idea, build the arrangement, build the riff according to, I know what this thing means, but now I need you to know what it means. And so that's easy. I can do that. So I'm going to use all the old tricks. I'll use this, the synthetic bass, which is
just a quick side note on that. Oh, sorry. On that bass riff. So
Yeah.
I did, just hearing it the first time before you opened up the MIDI, like I didn't
Mhm.
expect it to end perfectly, like on a measure like that. So is that what you're kind of hinting at when you said before, like you know where the tension or you know where something's going to end, and you just stir the pot within and kind of add that. I don't. If I saw the Benny again, I could probably tell you where I'm
Yeah,
guessing. But
yeah,
I
let's
think
do it.
like the first beat like kind of went over or something of that sort. Like when he did the 3 3 2 3. Yeah, like so right there is on the second. Yeah, so that's where he's kind of like running over to create that less robotic feel to the rhythm. Like he's kind of stirring the pot there, kind of thing.
100,000%. Yeah, yeah.
Oh.
So this is an example of like what pot stirring looks like more or less is you're going over some bar lines, but
Mm-hmm.
you're purposely resolving on others. That's how you don't get lost in the pot stirring. So it's like you have to stir the pot, but you have to also know where you're ending that thing, and you have to kind of know ahead of time. You have to choose, essentially choose. So that's where this type of framework, in the same logic of Meshuggah framework, T-High
Yeah.
framework, it's that I already know where I have to stop the tricks, and just knowing that is enough to inform sort of like what kind of tricks, what kind of numbers, and things like this. So in this example, this is exactly how it's done, man. You have to keep going. I've been thinking about this for like maybe 24 hours, so it's been settling, but I had to think about a lot of this to even hear it, like to even hear how this kind of resolution happens. But you can see that it's like it's like the only time where there's two twos in a row. It's like a different kind of vibe, like right before the thing resolves. And
Okay.
this is what I find to be funny is like there's some levels to this, but so Tool, remember I said a second ago, there's something ironic about this riff. And actually, I think a lot of Tool's music, as they go later in their career, it becomes more and more ironic because they're using the same things that they've used on every song, and they're in the past, and they're just digging deeper with that material, but it's always so close to the original material. So this is what I mean. The OG Tool riff, like of all Tool riffs, I made a meme out of this. Is like it's just the 3 3 2. Like 90% of Tool riffs are 3 3 2. They're and notice that that is the microcosm of pot stirring philosophy. It's stir the pot for three, because that three goes over the backbeat. It goes against the backbeat, right? And then this three realigns to the backbeat. So I know this looks funny because this is in 7. I have this time signature as in 7 because technically the song's in 21, so that just helped me to gridlock it. But don't worry about
Okay.
that. This is 4 4. Look at this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 eighth notes.
Oh.
This is 4 4. I know it looks like it's that. That's not. That's just the 7. Ignore that. I know that's hard, but ignore that. This cursor is on the 4 4. So this is a 4 4 measure, right? And I'll really illustrate it. If I just do this, watch this, right? What did I do? I'm looping this to make the Tool joke audible. It's 4 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 1 2. It sounds weird because it's like out of context, but actually, if I get rid of the Adam Jones part, it will make way more sense. Like just 4 4, like 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 1 2 3 4, right? So it's like if I tap my 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 1 2 3, you know what I'm saying? Like I'm tapping my foot as that was half notes. That's his half notes, like 1 3 1 3, but it's really 1 2 3 4 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. That's exactly what this is. This is 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, because we know in 4 4 music, 4 is a downbeat, oftentimes with a snare, but even if it doesn't have a snare, it doesn't matter because the snare could be on 2 and 4, or it could be on beat 3. You know what I mean? Like, you know what I mean? You have that thing. So either way, downbeat, 4 is a downbeat. So if you hit that downbeat after you just stir the pot right there, that's the classic thing. That's like the philosophy. Like that's the basic thing. I call it the rhythm. I literally call that the rhythm. The rhythm is 3-3-2, and just like know that like it's just the most ubiquitous rock riffing rhythm. It just always happens. It's just like I hear it all the time, and everything I notice it everywhere. It's in like it's the same rhythm as in literally reggaeton uses the same rhythm too. 1, 2, 3 and 4 and doom. It's the same rhythm. What's happening is the backbeat is happening right here, right? You can hear that. That's where the backbeat is, where the occurs. It's just a classic rhythm. So it's not just a Tool thing. It's like an ancient of days rhythm, right? The rhythm, the 3-3-2. And that can be grouped in 16th, 8th notes, whatever. You can do like macro 3. But anyway, we're getting a little far away, but it's not that far away. We're still on the level of like, what's going on here? Tool is being ironic somehow. Look how the bass itself is marking it so deliberately, right? The bass could have done some stupid things. It could have done like something like this or whatever. It would be like less clear, right? It'd be less clear what the thing is. They're purposely trying to do the classic rhythm as clearly as possible. And they're hiding it in the bass because what Adam Jones is doing on the guitar is not that. It's like it's moving completely against that. He's playing like a longer phrase against it, but they're hiding the classic where it needs to be. So the classic is the point here. If I'm going to like use this as a framework, that's what matters. That's the takeaway. But then where it gets like they're I guess following up the irony with some like actually turns out it's not ironic at all. We're just digging deeper. Is they're just doing 3-3-3 3-3s, right? 3-3. So it's like, is this somehow related? Like, what the heck? 3-3. So an extra 3 and an extra 2. It's like an extra 3 and an extra 2, and that's kind of this response. So the call is just this first measure of 4-4, and like within the riff itself, there's this response, which is like somehow in a basic rudimentary sense, they're related because they're the same components and kind of in the same order, right? It's like 3-3-2. So the 2 is coming at the end. And this is 3-3-3-2-2. The 2s are coming at the end, right? So it's like, think about it. First principle is like the 3s stir the pot, right? The 3 stir in the pot, the 3 stir in the pot. The 2 realigns. 3 stir in the pot, 3 stir in the pot, 3 stir in the pot. 2 realigns, or 4 realigns. And as a side note, the actual time signature here is literally 21-8. That doesn't matter, but the point is notice how the realignment is still happening with 2s and 4s, regardless of the fact that it's in 21-8. Just a cosmic principle somehow. I'm not saying I understand this. I just see often that you're ending a lot of your phrases with those 2s because the 2s are the thing that gets you off the 3 track. Like you're on the 3 track, you got to get off of it somehow. And it's like when you do the 2, you're getting off of it, and then you just know where you need to get off of it. In 4/4, you know you're going to get off of it either every 2 measures, every 4 measures, every 8 measures, something like that. In odd meters, you just know it's the odd meter. So if it's 21, where's the end of 21? And then reverse engineer the end of 21. So that's all right. So the big takeaway we've got here is we see this big, long, annoying 21-8 rhythm. But what matters here is we see the first chunk of it is a good old fashioned 4-4-3-3-2, the classic oldest trick in the book. And then it seems like it's developing with this 3-3-3-2-2. And those are our components. We got a first component, a second component. And now we understand like the intention. We understand like where the source rhythm comes from. And that's important because if we're going to do this, the mistake that I've made is not realizing that source rhythm is like intrinsic somehow. And it goes back to the idea that I don't even fully understand how to write in odd meters, but Tool clearly does. So if they are doing it, I'm going to trust that they actually found like the optimal sequencing. I'm not going to like rework the 21. I'm going to be like, it's just the sequencing that they made. And so I want to understand that as best I can. And so how that looks is understanding that it's a 3-3-2 and a 3-3-3-2-2, and that's it. Okay, so that goes back to the idea is I need this to reflect that somehow. But I don't have to make it sound anything like Tool. I just need this. And you can hear it, and I should even mark that downbeat maybe with like a, for now. Because I'm just going to think about this bit only. If I try to write a riff through this entire thing, that wouldn't work out very well, if that makes any sense. If I tried to write a riff that just abided by this 21 beat cycle every time it happens, wouldn't be enough continuity. It wouldn't be enough continuity. There would be continuity in the sense of it's staying in the same freaking drum groove. That's not enough. That would be a false anchor. It's not enough to just follow the rhythm. You'll know I've done this before. It's just it's like you untang your fishing line got tangled out to sea and you're just in trouble. It's like you gotta like be simple and basic and follow the phrasing that is in the original version, and that's the secret. And then just speaking from experience, when you do this, you're in no danger of sounding like the original song. You're in absolute, especially if you want to change tempos. But even if you don't change tempos, which I often don't change tempos, especially with the Tool ones, I've never ever been in danger of sounding like a Tool song, even if I play in the same tuning. Even if it's like it just doesn't. It's just not what happens. And I'll show you what I mean. I'll show you how. Okay, so as we've said, we've got this 4/4 thing. That's the thing, right? So just remembering that this is a measure of 4/4. Might be, yeah, it's just good to mark it like, okay, beat 1, beat 2, beat 3, beat 4, and I'm just going to think about this right now. And it's like now I've made it really, really, really easy on myself. So I'm going to get the bass. That's going to be my representation. So I literally already know, so this is getting, by making it easy on myself, I mean, I already know that I have the 3-3-2, so I can just mark that in the bass. There it is, right? So there's my freaking rhythm, right? So now the question is, well, what do I like? What do I want to do here? So what's great is in the Tool version, they don't. I already broke away. It's like I'm nowhere near that anymore. I could be so simple. I could just do something like this. Watch this. Oops, this. So what am I thinking? I'm just thinking of D minor pentatonic on the most basic level. One trick that I do is I will change the key, like, because I usually, like Gas Station and a lot of my stuff, I tune to either E flat or D flat. So that's one thing, but it doesn't even freaking matter, because watch this. And I just go back to this. Maybe that's an oversimplification, but let's just keep sticking with it, not overthink it yet. Because there's all kinds of choices. I mean, you could even think like, for example, just do that, right? Just do that, invert that, whatever. Like so painfully basic. And that might be, there might be like any other choice, but like produce properly, that's like basic, good rock riffing. Okay, but here's the thing. So it's almost like I'm marking that this is the second thing. I've marked it somehow. I mean, subconsciously. I marked it subconsciously because I knew that the first thing is like a 4/4-3-3-2, and now I know this is a 3-3-3-2-2. So I go 3, 3. I got my 3/3s, and then I got my 2/2s, and now I've marked that, and I literally see those components. Okay, let's explore some possibilities without overcomplicating the thing. But I want to show you like different levels of thinking here. So like one. So for sure that probably is not going to move. That note's going to stay the same because that's marking the next phrase. And I want to be really clear that I'm marking the sub phrase within the primary phrase. So it makes sense to repeat that note. It's just like some basic continuity, very simple. So maybe here something could happen where I do maybe. I might be overcomplicating. But see, there's a bit of a continuity though, right? And I'm just doing that. But I'm gonna gamble. I'm gonna gamble because I get to hear it. So if I don't like it, I can just change it. Before I hear it, do I want to just follow the logic here? Yeah, I think I'm just going to keep following the logic. You can see what I'm doing. I broke the second three into just ones. That's all I did. And I just used the continuity of the notes that I already used. Like this is how it's probably going to sound good. This is probably going to be a dope riff if I just stick with it, not overthink, but keep going with this thread of logic that I got. So I think what's happening here is, all right, this is coming to the end. It's coming to the end of the phrase. So now this is great, right? This is what I'm saying about I know where the thing ends. I know where the thing needs to back up on itself. So that helps me to make a decision about what to do here. So like, what does that actually mean? That means that I might want to hit a note I haven't hit yet or something like that, or what, you know what I mean? So it's like, I've literally only hit a total of 3 notes so far. Maybe I could follow in the philosophy of basic rock and just finally hit this one. I actually think that might be a really good choice. And now, oh man, now it comes together. I have a feeling we might like that riff. Let's hear this. I can hear it. I can hear it developing. I don't dislike it. And it's one of those things where I could totally stop here and just anchor it. I could just anchor it. Because when I'm writing riffs, I mean, I do that all the time. And you were in one of those pivotal moments where I really realized that riff I wrote with you and Mervin on the call, I doubted that so much in the very beginning. Ended up being easily the best 4/4 song I ever wrote. So every time that happens, or like, for example, every time something like this happens, I have like a feeling like, oh, is that good enough? Is that good? But through experience, I just realized it's absolutely good enough because I can arrange this 6 ways from Sunday on the guitar. I can do all kinds of wacky, like, you know, flat picking stuff, like just staying to this parameter. Like it's going to sound freaking good. Okay. So that's one thing that I can do, but I'm going to ask myself if there's another thing that I'm hearing, and I actually think there might be something a little different here. Like, for example, maybe this might be this. Maybe. And so what's interesting here theoretically is like those notes serve the exact same freaking purpose. I'm just playing the different option. But like what I'm thinking of is like in D minor pentatonic, right? If I'm thinking off the open D string, it's like the F, the 3rd fret of that's going to take me back to D, like real nice, in the same way that this note where I just was, which is the, you know, that's the flatted 7th of the key, or, you know, it's the note immediately before you return to D, right? So under D, right? Because D is up here, right? So it's like the note before D kind of thing. And what I'll do is I'll just put D down here because I know I know that's where it goes back to. Like, I already know that. So we can experiment by just being like, is this more authentically pulling us back to D? Let's just isolate. Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking when I heard that. That's exactly what it was. It wasn't the C, it was the F again. And it makes sense because that's the note I'm emphasizing here. That's the note I'm emphasizing here. That's the note I'm emphasizing here. To come out with C, or that note rather, don't even have to think about it. It's just another note, come out with another note. It's just like, maybe that's too much information. And I think that's what I instinctually heard. But I'm also thinking about when I go to arrange this and bring out the guitars and stuff, there's a good chance that C is going to be in that chord, just not as the primary basic, right? It's like, so I'm going to hear like a spectrum of notes beyond just this. So for that exact reason, this basic riff should be as simple as humanly possible. Now that could mean in like certain situations, it's as simple as humanly possible, but it's insane. You know, it's not to say that it can't be absolutely like psychobilly, you know, insanity, but it's still the most simple version it could possibly be in this context. And I think we've achieved that with this so far. So just hearing it. I love that. I love it.
Quick question.
Yep.
So I'm just trying to like process all this, and maybe this is
Yeah.
because I haven't experimented enough and I'm underthinking it. But
No, it's
could you
perfect.
simplify and say like, so if we're working in 4/4, like any kind of odd number, like when we're speaking in terms of like threes and twos and stuff,
Mhm.
any kind of odd number, you could like link that to like stirring the pot, and then even numbers you can link to like your umbilical cord, like what's grounding you, kind of thing.
You literally
That's kind
can.
of it.
You literally can.
Okay.
You can, and I encourage you to think about it on such a simple level because most
Okay.
people won't accept that simplicity. It's like hard to accept that simplicity. But really, you see it here because you see that all that we've done is we've used threes and twos. And you see exactly in this example, whether it's 4/4 or not, you see how the twos always realign it. They
Yeah.
realign it here because this is a point of realignment, even though it's like mid or not midway through the riff, before midway through the riff. There's clearly like a realignment at the beginning of the riff, and that realignment happens via the two. It happens that way. So it seems to be that the two as a tool supports all realignment, but to be clear, there is this thing, and I have to do this to you, is there's this thing, right? Now I'm not gonna do that in the song, right? I broke the barrier right there. I'm not gonna do that, but I'm saying in a composition where it's 4/4, just go back to the idea of 4/4, really to make a point here, right? Remember, this is our little 4/4 subset. And if I solo the bass, nothing wrong with that. Just like nothing wrong with any of that. We're in like pure objectivity, fundamental component objectivity. And this is what's great, philosophically speaking, when you're in that objective place, right? Where you're thinking of, okay, I understand threes stir the pot, twos stir the pot, but if I resequence threes and twos, what happens? The pot gets stirred a different place, but there's still a realignment, right? The realignment happens because they're not all the same number. That's the point. And it's not like we have a million numbers to choose from. On the micro level, which we're talking about base level components, that's the micro level. We literally only have threes and twos to choose from. So if you only do threes, you're never going to hit realignment. It's just not, unless you're in like, say, for example, 9 or 6 or 3. But that's not the point. That's completely different. If you're in any kind of time signature, whether it's 4/4 or anything else, including 3, excluding 3, if you only have threes, you never hit a realignment. If you only have twos, everything is a realignment. It's the symbiotic yin and yang of both of those in both 4/4 and odd meters. And then just to illustrate is like you have all of this variation. When you think about, so right, we're just listening only to the bass now. You have all of this inevitable variation, right? And I just want to illustrate that because I think you'll find this very useful. Is like when you're looking at those components, you have every reason to think about a song, for example, or a riff or a section of a riff that would be this version of the 3/3/2, where it's a 3/2/3. You have that for sure. And you also have this for sure, the 2/3/3. You have all this. This is all fair game. And notice the notes themselves, it barely matters. All of those combinations work. That's fine. I could make a song out of that, you know? What about this one? I really like that one for some reason. I gravitate towards it. Maybe because it's resolving back to the one instead of over here was resolving to a different note, but it's kind of like, you know, the home bass, a little bit away from home from the top, a little bit away from home from the bottom, slam back home at the downbeat. So it's to answer, getting back to your question of just like twos you can associate with realignment, but on a bigger level, it's just that you need them both. And so you can use them both to find whatever realignment you need. So in this case, it's a single measure, right? Because that's the basicest one. But if you did say 2 measures of 4/4, well, now you have some more possibilities, a more juggling. And if you literally just think about juggling those components,
you have a shit ton of variation right there, a shit ton. And then to take it one step further, because I think you're thinking about this possibly, I know this is way that you write, is you can use the 2s and the 3s as space also. So I can do this. And that's a sick effect, because that sounds like a stutter step nightmare, but it's like 4/4. So that's the other thing. The space also fits into the framework of the components, right?
Okay.
So I just did the classic mistake, just to make the example, where I just like broke the parameter of the Tool song, and I could have lost myself in Nightmareville. But you see where I don't need to do that. I don't need to worry about that. I'm committed to that fundamental rhythm that they already did, and then I'm just finding notes that fit that contour, and that as a practice informs when I use my own frameworks. It's almost like it's no different. That's why I call them a framework. This is a framework, just like a T-high is a framework. I don't think about it differently. Like I said, I'm thinking about this might as well be 4/4 for all I care. I don't think about things not in 4/4. And so I'm only always just thinking about the micro components and then breaking those micro components down according to whatever framework I use, whether that's a Tool song, a Meshuggah song, or even an Alice in Chains song. Any song you could ever think of that has any rhythm, a Rush song, they all do it. Or use a T-high or a Meshuggah framework, or like now it's overlapping into just the logic of like use things that don't leverage your creativity. Think about creativity on a different level. Like what we're doing right here is we're just doing like work, and it's kind of easy. It's easy because there's so many anchor points to just focus, and we'll never get lost. I will never get lost. I'll never have a writer's block because I know this anchor system and I trust it and things like that. But what you can do is start to find, frameworks, or at least rather, like, instead of just whole frameworks, you can just think about simple things like, okay, this is a 2-bar phrase. What are the combos of 3s and 2s I can do? And then just start with that. Maybe use space, maybe don't use space. And that's it. That's the only thing. Once you've chosen the rhythm, staple it into your consciousness and never look back. Then do the same thing with notes. So you already have the rhythm though. Already have the rhythm. Start with the rhythm. It's absolutely pointless to start with notes in my experience, because I've never been inspired enough by notes alone to write something cool. There's only so many scales. I've heard them all. I full circled all the way back to freaking pentatonic. I just use pentatonic all the time, and I can't find a better choice. So that tells me that it's definitely not about the notes. If anything, it's about using the simplest notes possible and letting the rhythm do all the work. So for that reason, you just start with just basic sequencing of 3s and 2s. You can use a framework to do that, or you can not, or you just do this miniature sort of thing where it's like, okay, 2-bar phrase, what are my available combos on the 16th note level? Oh, 4-bar phrase, where are my available combos on the 16th note level? Sequence those, find a rhythm that's just like doom, 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 whatever. And then anchor it, commit, then find the notes that keep the spirit of the rhythm intact.
Okay.
That's a hard, intuitive thing, but it's not hard for you. You've been writing music for a long time. You know exactly what I mean. There are certain notes that support the contour, certain rhythms, and the trap that most people fall into, I see very often, is that they don't limit themselves to being like, well, geez, it's probably going to be one of the notes of the pentatonic scale. They're thinking, oh, I need to use the it's like, nope, you're just going to not make any progress. But instead, like with my approach here, I could obviously do like just to show a small, tiny example. If, for example, I didn't use a pentatonic scale, I'm still using the same logic. I'm going to change one freaking note. Why? This is important. If I'm respecting the spirit of the rhythm, there are certain notes where I can see, oh, there's other choices here that are still the basic logic of the rhythm. For example, this one, that note, I know a note from experience that will basically serve the same purpose, but it will be more evil. Watch. If I just do it that, it's just more evil, right? It might as well be the same thing. And it's honestly not as good over there. So it makes sense I didn't intuitively think of that. But if I put it with the drums, let's just see if it makes sense that way. No, see why the reason why it doesn't make sense is because it would have changed these notes. Those notes have to now change to support it. So welcome to Nightmare Land. This is why I don't do this stuff.
Yeah.
I'm just like, I know I'm gonna be rock solid in pentatonic with interesting rhythm. If it occurs to me like I just forced it right there. That was an example of forcing it, and you see how it fails miserably because there's too many things anchored to this note being the note that matters. Like these notes are reflecting of it. This note is reflecting of it. But if I just take it to the bank, that if I'm using pentatonic scales in interesting rhythm sequences, using space, that's super important. I'm never gonna lack for language. I'm not even close to running out of. I have a billion years of combos that I haven't even explored. So that's important. That's a mentality that's very important because I think many people are thinking of, oh, it's all been done before. Dude, maybe theoretically, conceptually, it's been done before, but here we are for sure making riffs that have never been done before. Facts, right? It's like, don't even overthink it. It's just like, literally that one hasn't been done before. I could write 10 more that haven't been done before.
Yeah.
So it's just, but they're all pentatonic and they're all 3-3-2 basic sequencing, whether it's in 4/4 or not 4/4. So that's what I wanted to show you today. I just want to show you like some deep like extrapolation of rhythms. The real underlying philosophy here is just, if I have a rhythm, I can just bet the farm on it. And I don't ever need a question that it will be a mistake. It will never be a mistake. It just won't be. Whether I use space or not space, no matter how I sequence the 3s and 2s, no matter how I break up, like in this example, I broke up a 3 into single notes. That's as long as I respect some kind of like, I didn't do it too much, right? Like if I did it too much, it would kind of obscure my point, right? But the way that I did this 3, it aligned with my point because it's still just that space of 3. It almost would be like if I extrapolated, that's almost the same purpose. It's almost the exact same purpose. And it probably sounds amazing. You know, it's like all that. So it's like when you know what the underlying intention is, what that literally means is, what is the organization of 3s and 2s? When you know what that is, you now have an insurance policy that everything you write is going to be dynamite, as long as the only thing that could invalidate your insurance policy would be if you use too many notes and use too many weird notes and don't rely on like basic pentatonic stuff like that.
Yeah. So say first that so you have 3-3-2-3. So that the 2-3 right there, if you were to join those together and make a 5, you're just kind of you're just gonna have a different type of resolution, right? Is that how that would work if you joined actually the second 3 and then the 2. So where it hits the downbeat on that first 3 notes there.
Sorry, because this is not, that's just a repeat note. But sorry, say that one more time.
Basically what I'm trying to get at is like if you joined a 3 and a 2 together. So right there where the cursor is, that 3 and 2, if you were to join those together, you would just like the character of the riff would change and you'd have a different type of resolution on the downbeat kind of thing. Is that how that would work?
Right, because this is the downbeat, right?
Yes. Yeah. Yep. So that's where it ends. So if you were to join that 3 and 2 together, make it the same note, that would just kind of change the riff and make a different type of resolution, right?
Yeah, but it would be awesome. Like the space, like, okay, so like that's an example of like, oh, you're using a 5 to extend where there would have been a 3 and a 2, and then it's like a little bit more vague, right? It's like more, it's just not as right. It's
drawn more out.
Okay. Yeah, but that's a really, so let's just kind of hear it. It's awesome. You know what I mean? Like,
can we, are you able to make the drums play as well?
Yeah, let's do it. Right. So all I have to do is just eliminate that. No, I think the drums already kind of mark it. Like I didn't have a kick on that other one. So so they're already there. Right.
Okay.
maybe what I do is like, no, not that one, not that one. This one. Whatever, right? Just to give a little bit more of like anticipating the downbeat, something, because it's a lot of space, but it's an effect. It's like it's cool because those kinds of effects they make it less obvious what's going on, but it's still completely obvious, right? It's still completely obvious that you have a 3 that starts it, and then now it's less obvious there's like a 3 and a 2 at the next part. But when the downbeat hits, it's clear like you did a normal thing, and every person listening to it would understand it. But there's like an extra level of uncertainty and tension as a result of more space, and for sure that's like a tool in your toolkit, 100%.
But you could actually probably use that for like tension and stuff like that, huh? Like joining those. Okay.
Oh man, exactly. Now you're thinking, because what's really going on here is that you've already established a motive, and now you're just bringing a different aspect to the same motive. And so the intention is underlying and woven, but you've now just made it unexpected. Oh, there's like more tension, but it's still aligned with what you didn't pull the rug out from the audience. And that's, I think, important. That's kind of the lesson of 4/4 and the lesson of like using, symmetrical things, whether it's like asymmetric here and then symmetric here, blah, blah. It's like there's symmetry somewhere. And so the listener is always needing symmetrical realignment at some point, whether or not it's like, if maybe it like doesn't happen hardly ever at all, but like at some point it needs to happen. And like the crazier theoretically you are as a listener, or the more experimental you are as a listener, you have a higher tolerance for that stuff. But I would say that like the dominant music of like rock and riffing music, it's all about symmetry. Like no one is fighting the current. I would say the only people who fight the current on that are like Dream Theater. That's like the only guys who are like, they don't worry about symmetry. Or I just don't understand how they think about symmetry. It's weird. But versus Tool, understand everything symmetrically, but they definitely push the envelope with that symmetry. They're pushing it farther than like Meshuggah does, because Meshuggah is doing their style of asymmetry is like it's on a different level. Like everything's in 4/4, so it's like all fundamentally symmetrical. But then since it's fundamentally symmetrical, that allows them to do more insane rhythms in a way. And you know what I mean? Like they're doing like 33 and stupid shit like that. It makes sense because it's like so fundamentally symmetrical that they'll never be able to obscure that. You can't obscure that point no matter how hard you try. Versus Tool walks a fine line. They walk a fine line there. They could absolutely fail. And maybe some people think they failed. Maybe some people can't even hear it, right? That's why maybe it's a polarizing band. But all that, that's just making that simple point of like, it's all about the intention underneath and then keeping the consistency of that intention. For example, turning that into a 6 or something like that, or turning that into an 8 or so, like it's still the fundamental grouping. I very much learned that from the Tool and Meshuggah studies. It's like they just respect the fundamental grouping and then they don't worry too much about anything else. Note wise, don't overthink it. It's all about being super deliberate with the notes and how the notes relate to the fundamental spirit of the rhythm.
Got it. Yeah, this lesson was super informative. This clears up a lot. Okay.
Awesome, man.
It's mind blowing. It's crazy to think about it in this way, because there's so much. There's like a, when you try to learn this stuff, this odd rhythm stuff, there's so much like shadow cast over it. It's like this dark art or something. But when you look at it like this way, it shows you a lot. That's cool.
Yeah. That's the thing, is like, this is that exercise, right? Taking an odd meter and then just kind of thinking about the odd meter as just a framework itself, but it's not an arbitrary odd meter. It's not just like 7. It's like, it's an actual song. That's where I think it's like, that's next level. I feel. I don't know if other people have thought of it, but it's really, really helped me, because I have a bit of a weird relationship with odd rhythms. And so I need to hear them as like just not being odd rhythms. And that's what gave me the whole insight of thinking about 3s and 2s. Because I just think about 3s and 2s. That's all I think about, even if it's in 4/4. you know, and I can have these macro frameworks, like I can have my T higher or my Meshuggah, which help me to organize my 3s and 2s and 4/4, but it's still always just like, oh, 3s and 2s, what's the one? That looks like it's going to be a 2. Okay, that looks like it's going to be a 3. Oh, maybe I could do a 5 there now, right? And that's what you're, there's where your 5s and 7s comes from. Your 5s and 7s are only just combos of 3s and 2s, and you nailed it when you said, well, I can just extend or connect a 3 and a 2. There's a 5, connect a 4 and a 3, or connect a 2, 3 and a 2. There's a 7.
All right. That's awesome. Yeah, that's super cool stuff.
Good. Well, I recorded that. I'm going to send that to you. And yeah, just reference that if you need. But yeah, man, that's I'm glad that helped and was clear. I was thinking about some stuff, just compositional stuff that really helped me so much. And that's one that, man, people just don't even think of. Like, okay, what do you take a drum riff from a tune and then write another tune? Yeah, that's a classic old trick in the book. Not that you need to do it, it's just what it teaches you. You had the benefit of it right there. Like, I did that a million times. You don't necessarily need to do it, but what I learned from doing that is exactly what I just showed you, and that's all that matters. It's that sequencing of 3s and 2s. Now you see where your larger groupings come from. They're just combos of 3s and 2s. So, yep, good stuff.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you so much for connecting and meeting up today. Yeah, that helps a lot. It gets me super pumped to make some music. So
sick.
Made it to the end. Congratulations. Well, I hope that was enlightening. If you want to go deeper on this stuff, I'm telling you, just book a call with me. Link in the description below. We're going to have a conversation about this stuff, okay? We're going to clarify any questions that you have. If you are a musician working through some creative blockages, I've got something that's probably going to unleash the floodgates of your creative awareness, okay? So we get started with that whole thing just by booking a call with me, right? We'll take it from there. It's a completely free call. Let's just have a freaking conversation about music. Let's see if I can actually help you, okay? So if you're stuck, you want to break through, you want to write 300 songs in, 5 years or whatever, let's talk.